Today, we're going on a pretty epic journey. We're going to trace the entire story of humanity's relationship with the cosmos. I mean, from the very first moment our ancestors looked up at the stars all the way to now, where we're, actively planning to build bases on other worlds. This is a deep dive into that whole long arc. The mission here is to get our heads around not just what we found out there, but how the big ideas, the conceptual leaps, actually made the physical travel possible. How did we go from just being stargazers to becoming, well, star sailors?
It's a fantastic story, and the thing that drives it all is pretty simple, really. It's curiosity, but it's also about utility. The whole history of space exploration, it didn't start with rockets. Not at all. It began the moment we noticed the sky had an order to it, that it was predictable. And that primal act of just watching the sky, that wasn't just foundational for science, it was fundamental for building civilization itself. It gave us time, it told us when to plant, and it gave us our very first sense of a cosmic order.
Okay, let's start right there then. Part 1, the dawn of cosmic awareness. So for thousands of years, the night sky was, I guess, the most advanced tool we had. It was the world's clock, its calendar, and also this stage for all our spiritual beliefs.
Precisely, and the level of sophistication that came out of that it's really easy to underestimate. If you look at the ancient Mesopotamians, they weren't just staring, they were doing serious math. They tracked the planets so meticulously, using arithmetic to predict, where Venus or Mars would be months in advance. They essentially laid the groundwork for mathematical astronomy. They proved the heavens might be mysterious, but they followed rules you could measure.
And you can see that belief in cosmic rules literally built into their monuments.
Absolutely. The Egyptians are a perfect example. Their pyramids, they weren't just tombs, they were expressions of the cosmos. The way they're aligned with certain celestial bodies, like the Orion constellation, that shows this profound belief that our world should mirror the architecture of the heavens.
And then you have the Mayans on the complete other side of the world with this just breathtaking grasp of celestial mechanics.
Oh, their calendars are legendary for a reason. They had observatories that let them track these cycles with incredible precision. They could predict solar and lunar eclipses, often better than their European contemporaries.
And all without telescopes.
That's the amazing part. All of it was done through just sustained generational observation and some really complex math.
And yet, with all this incredible observation happening all over the world, the framework that ended up dominating Western thought for over a millennium was, well, it was completely wrong. I'm talking about the ancient Greeks here and the geocentric model, the Earth at the center of everything.
It's a remarkable quirk of history, isn't it? You had Aristotle and then Ptolemy, and they built this really coherent Earth-centered system. And to be fair, it explained what people saw every day. It used these complex spheres and epicycles to show the sun and planets moving. To the average person, it just made sense. Everything looks like it revolves around us.
Right.
And this is the key point, I think. The geocentric model stuck around because it worked, mathematically speaking, even if it was clunky. And maybe more importantly, it was philosophically comforting. It put humanity at the very center of creation. It backed up all the existing religious and philosophical ideas. So for 2,000 years, that was the framework.
Which brings us to part 2, the Renaissance of Reason. This is where it gets really interesting, because the exploration starts here. It's conceptual breakout. The idea that we were stuck on Earth had to be broken intellectually before we could ever, dream of leaving physically.
And that shattering really kicks off in the 16th century with the scientific revolution. Nicholas Copernicus brings back this radical idea that the sun, not the Earth, is the center of the system. This heliocentric model, it wasn't just a small tweak to the map. Like you said, it was a philosophical bomb.
It basically demoted us.
It did. It stripped Earth of its special privileged status. It suggested we were just another planet circling a star like all the others.
But just proposing the idea wasn't enough to overturn 2,000 years of thinking, right? Why did it take so long to actually catch on?
You're right, the data wasn't quite there yet. Copernicus's first model, it still used perfect circles for the orbits because the circle was seen as this, perfect divine shape. So it worked okay, but it wasn't a slam dunk. It wasn't dramatically better at predicting things than the old, complicated Ptolemaic model.
So they needed proof.
They needed proof, and they needed a better mechanical description. And that proof came with Galileo Galilei. He takes the newly invented telescope, points it at the sky in the early 17th century, and his observations they completely annihilated the ancient ideas.
So what were the smoking guns? What did he see that changed everything?
3 huge things. First, he looked at the moon and saw mountains and craters. This flew in the face of the idea that celestial bodies were these perfect heavenly spheres.
So the heavens were imperfect, just like Earth.
Exactly. Second, he discovered 4 moons orbiting Jupiter. That proved that not everything in the universe revolved around the Earth. There were other centers of rotation.
Okay, that's a big one.
But the real clincher, the definitive proof, was Venus. He saw that Venus went through phases, just like our own moon, from a tiny sliver to a full disk. Now here's the insight. In an Earth-centered system, Venus is always between us and the sun, so you should only ever see crescent phases. But Galileo saw a full phase.
Wow.
And that's only possible if Venus goes around the sun, and at times the sun is between us and Venus. That observation, it was just mathematically undeniable. Game over for the old model.
So that's the conceptual break. But once you tear down the old prison, you needed the new set of rules. You have to go from knowing where the center is to understanding how everything moves.
And that's where Johannes Kepler comes in. He took the incredibly detailed observations of Tycho Brahe, and he was the one who finally broke free from that idea of the perfect circle. He figured out that planets actually travel in ellipses, in these oval-shaped paths around the sun.
Moving from a circle to an ellipse sounds like a small change, but philosophically that must have been massive.
Oh, it was monumental. It was this declaration that what you observe, the data, has to win out over old philosophical ideals. The heavens were a bit messy, but they were predictable, so Kepler told us how the planets moved. But the final piece of the puzzle was understanding why.
Enter Isaac Newton.
Enter Isaac Newton. His genius was in unifying everything. He came up with his laws of motion and the law of universal gravitation. And the real breakthrough wasn't just the math, it was the idea. The realization that the same force that makes an apple fall from a tree is the exact same force that keeps the moon in orbit around the Earth.
That's it. That's the birth of the Star Sailor concept right there.
Absolutely, because by unifying terrestrial and celestial mechanics, Newton gave us the mathematical tools to predict trajectories, to calculate escape velocity. Without his work, calculating the physics for a moon mission would be literally impossible. So these guys, Copernicus, Galileo, Kepler, Newton, they conceptually broke us free from Earth centuries before we had the rockets to do it for real.
And we definitely followed through. Which brings us to part 3, the space race and the physical leap. The 20th century turned all that beautiful theory into a pretty brutal physical competition.
And the transition was shockingly fast. It was all fueled by conflict. The V-2 rockets from World War II became the template. The Cold War heated up, and suddenly being able to go to space was the ultimate measure of ideological and military strength.
And that first shockwave hit the whole world in 1957.
Yeah, Sputnik 1. The Soviets launched the first artificial satellite. It was tiny, the size of a basketball, but the psychological blow was just enormous. It proved without a doubt that humanity could now project technology beyond the atmosphere into what we call low Earth orbit, or LEO. The space age was officially on.
And that just set the stage for putting a human up there.
It did. In 1961, Yuri Gagarin became the first person in space. He orbited the Earth, and in that moment, it just fundamentally changed what it meant to be human. We weren't just thinking about it anymore, we were doing it.
The ultimate achievement of that first mad dash was, of course, the moon landing, 1969, Apollo 11. It's still, I think, the greatest mobilization of resources for a single non-military goal in history.
It was the absolute pinnacle of that era's philosophy. Go farther, go faster. Armstrong's one small step wasn't just a symbol of an American victory. It was the ultimate proof that Newton's math and Kepler's laws worked on a cosmic scale. We'd finally done it.
But the goals changed pretty quickly after Apollo, didn't they? Once we proved we could get there, the focus seemed to shift from just planting a flag to, routine access, sustainability.
Exactly right. We moved from the sprint to the marathon. The space shuttle era was all about making access to LEO routine, proving that reusability could work. But the greatest symbol of that shift is probably the International Space Station, the ISS. It's been a continuous human presence in orbit since the year 2000. It's not about one country, it's about cooperation and long-term science. It's a lab to prove we can live and work off-planet for good.
And while the humans are working just above our heads in LEO, We have these tireless robotic explorers doing the heavy lifting out in deep space.
Yeah.
They're like the modern version of those ancient stargazers, just collecting data.
They're the ultimate data collectors. I mean, you've got the Voyager probes launched back in the 70s, and they are now literally in interstellar space, still talking to us, the farthest things we've ever sent. And then you look at the Mars rovers Spirit, Opportunity, Curiosity, Perseverance. There are robotic geologists on another planet sending back priceless data, telling us if it was ever habitable. They're scouting the land for when humans finally arrive.
And maybe the biggest leap in stargazing itself has to be the space telescopes. They connect all the way back to Galileo, but with just an unbelievable increase in power.
They completely rewrote astronomy. First Hubble and now the James Webb Space Telescope, the JWST, they're basically time machines. They get above our blurry atmosphere and can look back to see the very first galaxies forming. And by studying exoplanets, planets around other stars, JWST is turning that ancient philosophical question of are we alone into a real technological search.
So we've covered millennia here. We've gone from aligning pyramids to driving rovers on Mars. So what's the next phase? It really feels like we're on the edge of part 4, the future horizon.
I think we are. We're entering what you could call a second golden age of exploration, and the goals now are clear: sustainability and then deep space. The Artemis program is the key to all of this. The goal isn't just to go back to the moon, it's to stay, to build a sustained lunar presence.
A staging ground.
A crucial proving ground for radiation shielding, for using local resources, for closed-loop life support, all the things you absolutely have to master before you try the really big jump: sending humans to Mars.
And what's so different this time around is who's involved. For 50 years, this was all governments. Now, private companies are leading the charge.
That's the game changer. The rise of these new space companies is driving innovation and cutting costs at a pace we've just never seen before. They aren't tied to the same slow processes. They're focused on reusability, efficiency, and opening up whole new markets, like space tourism or even asteroid mining. It just completely changes the speed and the accessibility of everything we want to do next.
So if we tie this all together, it sounds like that same primal curiosity is still there, but it's now being supercharged by, well, economics and survival.
It's fundamental to who we are. We're defined by that need to see what's over the next hill, to understand where we came from, to look for other life, and just to keep pushing the boundaries of what we know and what we can do. We started by using the sky to understand our lives on Earth, and now we're using everything we've built on Earth to understand the rest of the universe. The journey from stargazer to star sailor is really, really far from over.
We've traced this incredible timeline, from the earliest calculations right up to the mind-bending images of the JWST. It's so clear that the moon landing wasn't the end. It was really just the prologue.
It really was. We talked about how Isaac Newton's unification of physics in the 17th century was that key conceptual break. It shattered the dogma that Earth and the heavens were different realms. And that idea is what allowed for physical exploration 300 years later. So that brings up a question I want to leave with you, the listener. If Newton's work was the leap that got us to the moon and on our way to Mars, what current area of research or technology, maybe it's in propulsion or gravity or our understanding of time, what represents the next great conceptual leap we need for true, deep interstellar travel? And what currently accepted physical dogma might it have to completely shatter? That is the next great hurdle for humanity to overcome.